welcome back to Edwards today. I'm super excited. We're doing a really fun project that requires no care at all and is easy for everyone, really. We are going to make a little closed Mossarium. By that I mean you'll put the lid on and you won't take it off because it will be its own little ecosystem and do its own watering. So it will the water will condense and fog up, and then it will essentially rain back down on the moss and keep it alive. It's just really fun to watch and something you can enjoy. And the little moss that's in there even can get these tiny little white blooms, so that's super fun. Okay, so we'll go ahead and jump right in, and as I'm building the terrarium, I will explain the various ingredients and how to care for your terrarium so that it's happy and lasts as long as it can. The first thing you want to put in your Mossarium are rocks on the bottom, and I want to just mention that when you're using these ingredients, I probably will have sent you more than you actually need, just erring on the side of not giving you too little. So you'll want to practice a little restraint and not use every bit of the ingredients, because your terrarium will end up too full, and then it sort of the design gets lost in that way. So to me, when doing this project, and I've done it many times, the most challenging part of it is to do that, is to not fill it so full that your the scene essentially that you want to see is clear up at the top versus in the middle of the vessel. Now when you get your rocks, you'll just get one bag of rocks. You'll want to kind of peruse them and see if there are any larger ones that you really like. The larger ones we're going to use up in the top to sort of simulate what would look kind of like a boulder or a cliff or something like that. So I will pull a few of those aside, and again, you're not going to use them all, but you'll have some options. And then you just go ahead and put your rocks right down in the bottom. So when you get your jar for your kit, you'll likely have individual bags inside of it. That's the way the kit will come. Take it out, go ahead and just clean it so that you're starting with a clean base without any fingerprints or dust, that sort of thing in it. Because once you get your arrangement made, it will be difficult to do that. So about right. So maybe about a ½ inch or so, not too much. You go ahead with the stones right in the bottom like that, and you're only going to see what's at the very outer edge. So if there's one that you really like, you can kind of put it towards the outer edge so that when the design is done, you'll see it. The next and very important step that you're going to add is the activated charcoal, and this is important because this is what will keep your terrarium and Mossarium, whichever, from smelling bad. So this will keep that sort of boggy, swampy smell from happening because of the moisture and moss. So go ahead and just sprinkle a little bit of that in there, and a little dab will do you. And that's it. And I just poured it in because if you touch it, it really makes a huge mess all over you. So heads up when you're doing that, this project. If you're wearing your favorite white sweater, I wouldn't, because this charcoal can make quite a mess. We're going to go ahead and do the Spanish moss layer, and this is just sort of it's both aesthetic and functional. This is going to help build layers for what little moisture is in your Mossarium to filter through. So we're going to put the Spanish moss there, and then the next step is to add a little cocoa husk. So you'll have a square piece like this in your kit, and you're just going to take a pair of scissors and round the corners off and make it circular so it fits nicely in your little jar. It doesn't have to be perfect, just you'll see when it gets in there, it just slides right in. Okay, so I'm going to just pop that right on top of the moss and the rocks, and you can see each of the layers look nice and individual. The reason for the cocoa husk is to create a natural barrier for the soil that we're going to put in, so that it doesn't just run right through and turn into weird, dirty, silty water. so that your layers remain separate and looking pretty. Before the dirt, I actually like to add just a little bit of, let me clear this out so you can see, this little tiny bark. You're going to see this in your kit, little itty bitty tiny bark. And again, you're not going to see the center, so I kind of like to find a couple little areas around the edge of the bark to just add it. And I might push down in some spots so that it's not just perfectly level, because I like how that looks. If you prefer yours just perfectly level, you can do that any way you wish. Some people at this point like to, before they add the dirt, might add like, from your rocks, you might add like a little guy over on the side. Oh, there we go. The idea here is that we're trying to recreate like a miniature scale of a little slice of earth, right? On earth, right? In the layers, there wouldn't be rocks just on top of the surface. They're like when you are in the mountains, the rocks aren't literally sitting on top of the dirt, right? Usually they're half buried or crooked or this way or that. So that's the idea here. So you can add a couple in there into the lower level. And then we're gonna go ahead and add your dirt. So it's a tiny amount. You're just gonna put enough to evenly cover the cocoa husk and rocks. Around like that. Just right. You'll get a couple little skewers like this to help push things around in there for you. Okay, so I like where that's headed. And you can, I mean, you really should use your creative intuition when you're doing this, and you'll have lots of little itty bits in your kit, and you might, while you want to keep the layers pretty consistent, you might prefer to add little mosses or rocks in the edges wherever you like. However you decide to do that creatively, that's up to you. Okay, so next we're going to go ahead and get a little bit of this sheet moss. So when you get your kit, if your sheet moss feels dry, go ahead and just get it all the way wet and then squeeze it like a sponge until the water's out, and it will just pop right back to life. It'll be moist when I pack it, but if when you go to open it, it feels dry, go ahead and do that before you start your kit. And I'm just gonna take a little piece in here and slide it right in, like that. And then I'm gonna, so I kind of like to put the rock to one side near the dirt, but again, this is your creative decision to make. So I'm gonna go ahead and put some of these little craggy rocks that we talked about right in there. And when I'm doing that, I'm gonna be thinking about what that might look like in nature. And I don't think I want a whole lot, like maybe just the one and one little tiny guy. I would say for this project, absolutely less is more. Okay. And so I want to make that look a little bit more natural, like it's not sitting on top of the moss, so I'm going to add a little bit more of this bark right here. I think that's cute. Okay, I like where that's headed. So in your kit, you're also going to have a bunch of little odds and ends and tidbits that you can decide what you would like, and you might not like to use much of any of it. That's entirely up to you. We dry things all year long that we can use in these tiny craft projects. So you might get some angel vine with little moss on it. There's like eucalyptus seed pods, brunera seed pods, some other dried bits. I grabbed this one thinking it looked kind of like a little cherry blossom tree or something. Maybe we'll try that. But that is entirely up to you, which pieces you want to use or don't want to use. And then, and some little sticks, because in my mind, when I look at this little stick, it looks sort of like a fallen tree or something like that. So I think I'll actually use this guy. So I'll kind of wedge him in. Okay, also, so maybe me some of these. Let's look in there. To me, these look like maybe a tiny shrub or tree. Just place it just so, like that. Okay, and that's enough, I feel like. And then you'll also have a little packet of reindeer moss, and there's going to be a couple colors. There's this beautiful chartreuse and this natural white color, and those you can just sneak in anywhere you like. And again, less is more, and I like to use these like a little chopstick to get them really right where I want them. Push it down so you can see it in that layer. Then I want a tiny little piece of the white one to go right down in front of, by the bark, so it kind of breaks up that dark color. Yeah. And then I like to just repeat the color a little bit, so maybe find a piece over here, a spot like that. Turn this around so you can see, just kind of sneaking them in where I think they'll look nice. Okay. There are also tiny lichens that can be put in, and these are alive as well. You can break them up in pieces that you like. Okay. And then last but not least, I have some tiny little friends, creatures. I'll be sending you something. There are little horses, little dinosaurs. This is optional. You may have something that you have found miniature somewhere along the line, like a tiny mushroom or something else you prefer, or nothing at all. It's totally up to you, but you'll get a little friend in your Mossarium kit, and you can decide if you want to use it or not. So I'm going to go ahead and just stick this little guy right up in here like that. Oh, one last thing. I almost forgot. I am going to include in your kit these, I have these itty bitty teeny tiny little air plants, and they can just go in anywhere you want. They don't have to come out and get the normal type of a regular air plant you would be giving a little bath to once a week. Here in your Mossarium, it will just do the job for you. So you just put that little friend anywhere you like in your Mossarium. They're so cute and teeny tiny. Okay. And then because your moss is moist, you don't need to water this Mossarium. To overwater it would cause molding. So if you find, like, after a week or so that you think maybe your moss was just super wet, and your Mossarium is a little too wet, and you see perhaps a little bit of mold forming somewhere, go ahead, take the lid off, let it dry out for a day or two, then put the lid back on. And you'll know you have the right balance if you don't have any mold growing, but yet you still have enough moisture to create that bit of condensation. So the difference between a Mossarium and a terrarium is that we didn't put any, besides moss, we didn't put any living plants in this. If you were to put a tiny little fern or something in your jar, then it would be technically a terrarium and not a Mossarium. So, but I obviously call it both things. So terrariums, ideally, you don't ever open again. You close them with that amount of water, and you never have to open them again. So that's the easy care part, right? You shouldn't have to do anything. Obviously, if you see your terrarium is dried out, then you must not have quite enough moisture in there. Open it up, pour a teaspoon of water in, a very small amount, half a tablespoon at the most, and close it back up and until you find that balance. So as far as where to keep your Mossarium, so if you think about where moss grows in your own garden, or when you're camping, if you notice where moss grows, it's usually on the north side of a rock or tree, and there's usually a lot of good shade cover, and shade cover usually also equals frost cover. so it protects the moss from extremes of heat or cold. So I think the perfect place for this is like in a bathroom where you just have some filtered light. Never like in a very sunny window. And if you have it in a place that has too much sun, you'll notice that the moss's color will start to leach out a bit, and it will become sort of a paler yellow instead of this beautiful bright green. So really, if you have a spot in your home that you find is kind of too dark to grow a lot of things, this is a perfect place to put a mossarium. Somewhere that doesn't get too much light and not too much heat or cold weather either. And then you can look around your own garden, or if you pick up a pretty rock from the beach or whatever, and you may have some things at home that are special to you that you want to include in your mossarium to make it that much more special. And now you know how to do it, so you could do this on a much larger scale. So the next time you have a giant pickle jar, you know what to do. Just wash it out and make yourself a mossarium. So the last thing you're going to do is go ahead and put your lid on, and you'll notice that these start doing their job very quickly. So away they go.